adoption of artificial intelligence or more sophisticated technology has been around for quite some time is that we've seen it over history, we've seen it over time, that people have had to adapt to the new technology.
The thing that I think is really powerful about this is understanding how you approach this will help you self-reflect on how it's going to impact you, because it will impact you. There's going to hit a point where we have to go and grow, because there's only so much that I can put off on the AI. Only so much I should put off on the AI.
We're talking about people. Well, we're talking about technology, but really the headline was about people losing their jobs and this due to AI. But I think of it as this fear or Welcome to Accelerating Humans, a podcast about how real people are navigating the wild world of tech, AI, and change, with a little bit of humor and a lot of honesty. On today's episode, we're unpacking one of the most overlooked challenges in tech, people. Specifically, how people react to change, especially when AI starts creeping into their job descriptions. We're walking through the 7 change archetypes Bert and I have seen over years of real-world experience. And we're also asking, what archetype are you? There's a funny story behind today's episode because right before we were about to record, I opened an email with the headline, AI is already taking human jobs. Not the most subtle way to start your day, but it got me thinking, how do people really react to tech headlines like that? Do you panic? Shrug, fire up LinkedIn to post something bold and emoji-filled? That's what this episode is about. Not the tech itself, but the humans reacting to it. Because every time we talk about AI, automation, or some shiny new platform, there's an emotional response behind the scenes. Fear, excitement, skepticism, maybe it's even eye rolls. But let's be honest. The emotional response is what makes or breaks whether a new tool actually gets used or collects digital dust. So today, Bert and I are digging into what we call the change archetypes. These are patterns we've seen in real organizations over and over again based on our own experience. First, we have pioneers who jump headfirst. Then we have analysts who won't touch anything without a spreadsheet. There's the warrior type who's afraid AI might take their job. The guardian who's worried we might break something important. Then you have the traditionalist who just wants to keep doing things the old way. The opportunist who's already selling an AI course. And then, of course, the humanitarian who's making sure nobody gets left behind. So, do any of these sound familiar? Well, here's the thing. These archetypes show up anytime you introduce a new technology, not just AI. I've seen it in system rollouts, onboarding processes, you name it. So this episode, we're naming the patterns, talking through how to work with each one, and offering up a self-assessment quiz to figure out where you land. Because understanding your mindset towards change, that's step 1 in actually navigating it, without, of course, losing your mind, your job, or your voice. So let's get into it.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. So right as I was pressing record, I did get an email, and I wanted to read you the headline of the email. The headline is, AI is already taking human jobs. Then when I opened the email, it said, the AI future is already here. New data confirms it. Companies are hiring less in roles AI can do.
Are you calling an audible? What are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, I think that this is a really important topic to discuss because I read this and I don't have fear when I read it, but I think that a lot of folks who may have gotten this email from a very well-known publication or might see it on a newsfeed or social media might have very strong reactions to it, particularly negative reactions to it. So I thought maybe we should talk about all the different reactions that people have to AI technology and when it comes to their jobs or including it in their businesses or the workplace.
Okay, I've got a vision for this now, and I'm thinking so the way that people interact with this, I can drop them into a couple of different archetypes. I've got
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
that are, yeah, I'm all in, like, let's do it.
Mhm. Like you
Pioneer.
and I.
Yeah, we're all in. We're going to do it. We've got the people that are more on the fence, kind of analyzing things, or the analyst. I've got people that are worried about what could happen, people that are going to guard against what could happen. Then I've got people that are just incredibly resistant to change. Then I've got people that are, and you've seen these on your feeds all the time, make $150,000 in 10 days with AI, the opportunist, if you would. And then the people that are really concerned, the humanitarian, if you would, that just want to make sure that we're doing it right in an equitable way.
Mhm.
And I think that one of the really fascinating things about workforces is that I'm going to meet all those people
Right?
on a regular
Right?
basis. And the question is, who's making the decisions at the company I work for? And is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because AI is coming.
Yeah. When we think about everything, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, AI, because that's really the hot new thing. But AI really falls under this overarching category of technology.
Hmm.
And I know that you work deeply with technology, but my experience with working technology and what I do is I do a lot of technology implementations or a lot of technology changes.
Sure.
And the archetypes that you mentioned or the types of people that you mentioned, while we're going to see this with AI, we see this all the time with any tech swap.
Mm.
So when I'm working in a payroll implementations or changing payroll systems, I see the person who's worked in payroll for 25 years and how that person reacts.
Yeah.
Uh, Even though you're swapping out one system for another. I see going into a company and saying, we're going to change your onboarding processes from paper to completely digital, what those reactions are. It's interesting the types of archetypes that you mentioned, Bert, because those really apply to all technological changes.
Well, any
I
change.
don't view it as just AI coming in for your job.
So
I
we're
mean,
talking about people now. Okay, I can work with that.
we're talking about people. Well, we're talking about technology, but
Sure.
really the headline was about people losing their jobs and this due to AI. But I think of it as this fear or these archetypes have always been there.
And it's how people respond to change at the end
Yeah,
of the day. And I think that we do have some. One of the things that I think is really important is that fundamentally people have not changed in a long time. There's
right.
technologies change and the way they interact with the world might change, but if you look at a baby, the baby still cries and learns and goes from a certain
Yeah.
age to a certain age, very similar to they did 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, we might have different tools in place. We might have different family structures in place, but individual humans, the way that we interact with the world and each other fundamentally is very similar. The
Right.
tools again. So this is a tooling question. So I now have these smartphones that I walk around with like they're attached to me. I now have all of these other devices. We've had the previous generation was connected to their television set. The previous generation was connected to the radio. The previous generation was connected to the newspaper. The previous generation, before the newspaper, we're going back to prior to the printing press. What do you
Hmm.
have a town crier, someone that is just telling everybody in a large enough city what's going on. Before that, it was just gossip circles. Before that, heck, I don't know. But you've got this idea of how people communicate, and you see how people respond to it, and you have very specific ways that certain people react and to change. And
Mhm.
the one that I think sticks out the most to us is that people don't like change because it disrupts. And when things are different, it's scary. I mean, this is bad. Obviously, it's not going to be something that I can count on, especially as we, in our world now, I've got all these bills to pay and all of these things that I have to deal with, and change is risk.
Right. How would you, if we put our brains together,
For sure.
what would be some of the objection handling towards these different archetypes in an organization that are resistant to moving to technology or even more specific artificial intelligence AI?
Okay, I've got some stuff on this. I've been thinking about it a lot, and part of it is I'm able to change the view from okay, I've got when I take AI out of it, when I start talking about it in terms of change, it's a different story. And this reminds me of when I was implementing a new system that I had built from scratch. And when I went in and tried to say, hey, this is what you're going to do, I got an incredible amount of resistance. And I think part of that is because of, momentum. People have been doing something the same way for a long period of time and they
Mhm.
just keep doing it if you let them. That's fine. What was really powerful is when I got buy-in from the stakeholders, the people that really were doing the work, and I got them to feel like they actually had some input on what we were doing,
Mhm.
that they could make a change and it would impact their lives and it would make things easier. I started getting excitement. And when I got excitement, this is, I'm giving one example here, but this is dozens and dozens of times throughout my career that I've done this. When I start getting that excitement, when they start being able to see a future and it's no longer my future, it's their future, that's a big change. And they take ownership of what the change is in that case. And once they start taking ownership of the change, I'm not trying to make them do something. I'm able to let them do something, and I'm able to be the conduit that helps shape what that might look like or what the technology is. But I'm also really working with the people that are the leadership to make sure that the changes that are needed by the people on the ground are able to actually be implemented in a cost effective way.
Let's look through one of the archetypes.
Sure. I've got the pioneer. I've got
Okay.
they're the eager adopter sees AI as adventure and advantage.
So
So,
that's us. So we're
well,
pioneers
exactly.
in technology and AI. We're looking to see, or we're excited about it, and we want to adopt it the best way we can. So those people really aren't going to have objections. Those people might actually be your top of the org charts.
Oh
They
yeah,
might be your CEOs, CFOs, COOs who are looking at this going, how can we use this to become more competitive?
maybe. I think that's a maybe, but I think that I want to identify those people early in my organization, and I want to give them the tools that they need to experiment with it, and then share the wins that they get to let the rest of the organization see it.
Got it. Okay.
Because if we do that, they're going to fight for me. They're going to convert for me, and they're my prophets, if you would, or they're the ones that are out there actually preaching for me, saying, "Hey, this is a
Yeah.
good thing. We need to really embrace this. It's
They're
powerful."
championing you.
Exactly. So I want to identify my pioneers. The other person that I really want to identify earlier is the analyst. So they're very evidence based, return on investment. They're talking in terms of business cases. They want to plan before they act because they're trying to measure and put the risk into a profile that is very
Okay.
specific. Give them data, KPIs.
Most of the changes from your organization that are going to come through, or even from an individual, I would think you are that pioneer mindset.
Sure,
So we said you may not be that C level. However, wherever you are in the organization, whether you are a systems admin
sure.
over a specific tool or a business analyst who thinks something can be done more efficiently, your mindset's almost going to be that pioneer. I want this change to occur.
Probably. I think that it depends. Again, I've seen all types in various places.
Okay.
But for the individual contributors, I've got people that get excited about it and people get fearful from it.
Okay. But then you do want that analyst to come in, that analyst archetype, because you want to show those proof of concepts.
Your CFO is going to be an analyst. They're going to
Okay.
be a numbers person. They're going to be a dollar person. And I need to be able to show and speak the language of that human and be able to say, hey, this is what's actually happening.
Okay.
And some of these things, some of the tools that we're talking about are going to be expensive. Some not as much as you think, but it's a change thing. It's a change management perspective that you were talking about earlier.
Right. Okay. So, what other archetypes do we have?
So I've got a warrior. So they're threatened or uncertain about AI's impact on their role. So
Mm.
get replaced.
I think going back to that headline,
Sure.
the headline, I would say, is really the one that probably pushes the warrior archetype so far
Hmm.
of AI is taking your job and you're saying, I'm a business analyst, I'm a project manager, I'm a product manager, I'm a payroll person, I'm an HR, I'm a staff accountant, I'm accounts payable. Oh no, is AI going to take my job?
Yeah. And I think that they need the reassurance. They need to understand that there will be change. The head of Anthropic recently said that 50% of white collar entry level jobs might go away. And Mark Cuban, who a lot of people have heard about from the Shark Tank, have basically said, well, yeah, but we used to have more than 2 million secretaries in this country too, and they transitioned to new roles.
That's really important to remember. And why I also said that adoption of artificial intelligence or more sophisticated technology has been around for quite some time is that we've seen it over history, we've seen it over time that people have had to adapt to the new technology.
Mm-hmm.
The secretary example is a great one. Part of it is also the time of in the 40s and the 50s you could only be a secretary, and
Mm-hmm.
now there is that gender equality where you can't be held back from being a rocket scientist if you don't want to. It also reminds me of the scene from Hidden Figures
Mm-hmm.
where, spoiler, you had women who were called computers and they were doing and rechecking all the mathematical calculations. And then the first computer as we know it, or iteration of it as we know it, came through, and women lost their jobs as the calculations persons. But one of the women, the managers in the movie, saw a future problem being who's going to fix this computer when it breaks. And she trained her women around her to be the ones to now fix the technology. So
Mm-hmm.
they went from being the quote unquote technology, the computers, to now fixing it.
Oh, and I think that that's highly likely a job path for AI is right now, having worked in frontline customer service at one point in my career, it was pretty soul sucking. It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And what I think is pretty likely is that you're going to have a, a, a series of AI agents that are going to work on the frontline customer service.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have an individual that is going to manage a group of agents. And it's very likely that person will be closer to those agents than most people think, monitoring them very closely because there's that risk that if you put people into the computer and they're immediately talking to the computer, they're going to feel distance from your company.
Right.
So they need to understand that they're going to talk to this person, but a human backup, human in the loop, if you would, which is the parlance in AI terminology,
Mm.
is right there.
I'd also say it's very much the pilot mentality
Mm-hmm.
that people also need to have as they think about those warriors, think about artificial intelligence or technology taking their jobs. A pilot knows how to fly a plane.
Mm-hmm.
A pilot takes off and lands. I'm oversimplifying this, but a pilot, majority of the flight, things are on autopilot. But you do not want a plane that's going to fly itself. And the reason that a pilot makes what they make on these commercial flights is because if the autopilot fails or there is any issue, that pilot can take control and they know exactly what to do. So even with technology coming in, I think about a project management software. I can dump all my knowledge and knowledge from everyone else to make the most amazing project plan that's AI. And when something is delayed, tells me every single risk through assessment that can be done. However, nothing is going to take away from my intuition or me being a seasoned project manager that AI can do?
Well, I think that the experience is you can train experience a little bit, but not as much as
Mm-hmm.
you think. I've spent a lot of time in self-driving cars at this point. I'm a bit of an early adopter. And every once in a while, I think I've had two notable instances where a big red warning sign pops up on the screen and it immediately disengages self-driving and it kicks it back in your hands.
Right.
And if you're not paying attention, it's like you're going in the ditch, buddy. It's not great, and it was very surprising. I think that I think about the drivers in major cities. I just spent the weekend in Baltimore, and the drivers there reminded me a lot of Atlanta. And I'm not sure that I'm interested in having full AI driving. That being
Right.
said, if I've got everybody's on AI, then I'm much less likely to have the human aspects that made that not a fun experience. The flight controllers right now, I think that this is one of those cases where there are certain jobs that are very ripe for AI. That's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if you look at the pilots, that is another thing that would be very ripe for AI. But then you have to balance that fear because if you put 200 people in an airplane and an AI is driving it and that red X comes up, it's kind of scary.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
So the warrior, definitely someone to keep an eye out for. Who
sure,
are
sure.
the other ones? What are the other archetypes?
So I've got a guardian who prioritizes caution, ethics, and minimizing risk or harm. So they really need to be involved in any sort of risk assessment. They need to be very aware of what guardrails exist and make sure that they feel invested and involved in that.
Mm,
So they're going to fight for those safeguards. And if you don't involve them early, it's going to be I built a thing and I forgot to talk to legal and compliance and they shut me down. So be aware.
yes.
Because
Or
see how I know
or
that.
or even or even in other people's lines of work, let's say you're working with a new accounting software, that person needs to know that there is a way to do a general ledger post manually if the AI is doing it incorrectly or if the technology is not configured appropriately. If there was some sort of human error with that, they need to be able to fix it so that it doesn't slow down their process during the adoption phase
there's
or
there's
the
definitely
hypercare phase of
there's
implementation.
definitely a holistic aspect of that. They might have a better picture than you do, and sometimes understanding where they're looking at within the organization really helps understand their fears. Let's talk about another one as a traditionalist, and I think that you're going to
Okay.
see a lot of this. They prefer the old way. They see AI as unnecessary, overhyped. So
But how does that different from someone like a warrior?
okay, so the traditionalist just doesn't see the value. The
Okay.
the worrier, I think, is worried that there is value and it's going to hurt. How's it going to impact me?
Okay, but a traditionalist is going, we've done this for the last 20 years that I've been in this company. Why do we have to change?
Yep, doesn't. Why we don't need to change. We don't have to change. Everything's fine. Leave it alone.
I have my Rolodex. So I have my Rolodex of all my contacts. Why do I need to put this into a CRM?
Well, I
That's your
mean,
traditionalist.
I know some people that are incredibly effective with a Rolodex. They make incredible amounts of money. They've been doing it a very long time. They do not need the new way. They've already made their money. They've already done their thing. They're right in that perspective. I have to remember that they've been incredibly successful. And if I just say, "Oh, you're the old guard," move aside, old timer, that's a bad
Mm-hmm.
way for me to look at it because I can learn from them.
Yeah, very interesting. The traditionalist.
Let's see. Then there's the opportunist, which I think you've probably seen on your LinkedIn feeds. They see it as a way to get ahead, leap ahead, disrupt, or win. This is so funny. It's like make $150,000 in 10 days with AI, and I kind of like I think PT Barnum. It's out there.
Mm. Well, I think this one is right, this is when we think about these archetypes, there's ones that fall in the optimist category and the
Sure,
pessimist category, because you and I both identify about being optimistic about technology. I
sure.
think it's really interesting calling it an opportunist, because whenever you are pro adoption of something new, you are always going to be pro opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's a very fine line about being an opportunist versus saying this is something that if we were to adopt this or make this change today, then I think that will give us a competitive advantage in the future.
So I think that every single one of these archetypes is on a continuum, and certain
Mhm.
of them are on one side of the scale and certain on the other. The opportunist is one that is likely going to have a very extreme drive for a competitive advantage. And
Mhm.
the thing is, we need to manage that risk appetite that they might have. Like they're going to really push for this, and they're going to basically be the worst enemy of the warrior because all of the things that the warrior worries about will come true if an opportunist is at the helm because they're going to push, 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 and they're going to adopt without thinking about it. They're going to run right over the guardian. They're going to run right over the traditionalist. They're going to run right over the analyst, and they're going to say, "Hey, we're going to do this." They might get results, but they're going to wreck their culture.
So that's really interesting to think about it, right, as the team.
Sure,
So either the team that is deciding to make the change or is important to make the change, or the individual contributors that are part of your organization. But as an individual, how can we look at these different archetypes and say, what is my archetype? And do I or do I not have a bias against technology and
sure.
artificial intelligence? Or where can this benefit me?
One of the things we were talking about, and I'm going to play with this. I know that you've done the old magazine quizzes back
Hmm.
in the day, and I think when the internet was young, there was this big list of figure out what you are, and you take a little quiz. I'm going to put together a quiz that will help you determine what your archetype is, and
Okay.
we'll put it out on LinkedIn, and I think that'll be a fun little experiment. The thing that I think is really powerful about this is understanding how you approach this will help you self reflect on how it's going to impact you because it will impact you. We had
Mm,
talked earlier before the show about okay, what would have happened if I had bought Bitcoin when it was 10 cents a coin back 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and I think that it was trading today at $106,000
yeah.
per coin. So you would have made an incredible amount of money with a very small investment. I think that this is a transformative technology. It has the opportunity to change everything. And because of that, there is a risk of losing who we are. That's kind of what we talked about with some of our earlier podcast about losing our voice. And I think that's really important. The humanitarian is my last archetype here. And they focus on equity, fairness, and team well being. And they're going to be very mindful that the organization does not move forward in such a way that they destroy themselves without realizing it. They, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to the people we work with. If we run roughshod over them, it's going to hurt their feelings. It's going to make it harder to work with them in the future. And you might think that, oh, it's just business, but business is made of people.
Right. So when it comes to mindset around
Sure.
technology and artificial intelligence, I've always been pro technology, just from when I was born, what I grew up with, what I've done for work. I've always been pro technology. But I do believe that having that mindset of being for or against or hesitant of technology is at this time going to make or break either the organization that you're influencing or your employability in the future.
This might be the most important thing we talk about. And I think that everybody needs to put on their analyst cap right now and look at where you work, look at how you interact with the market, and Try to do, there's a Stoic concept called premeditatio malorum, where you're looking towards the future and what could happen without dwelling on it to the extent that you're living in the wreckage of the future. Fine line. What could happen? What is likely to happen? What could go wrong? And the things that I think that you need to think about are, what is this going to do to your particular business? What is it going to do to your particular role? And how does the organization that you currently work for or currently run, how are you going to deal with these things? And it's a very fluid concept right now because we're not sure what's going to happen in the future. And if the thought process of the people that are making the decision falls into one of the archetypes that is going to pull back from AI, you probably need to start looking at what that's going to mean for you and what it's going to mean for the bottom line of the company in the next 5 or 10 years. If
Yeah.
your job is likely to be replaced because it's ripe for replacement, you need to start looking at it from the perspective of the the technologist that says, hey, that we're going to get replaced by these computers, but somebody's going to have to work on the computers.
Hmm.
So how do you reposition yourself to take advantage of what the future holds?
Right. And also in our Rolodex example, you had said people have made their money using a Rolodex, but they've already made it.
Sure.
So I believe that it also comes down to where are you in your career?
Yeah, exactly. I think it does come down to value, and understanding where value is created and destroyed within an organization is really important. And if I think that I can add efficiency by adopting AI, do I at that point decrease the number of staff or might decrease my headcount because I think that that's going to impact my bottom line and I should do that? Or do I transition them into a different role because it allows me to put my foot to the gas and accelerate?
Right.
So the type of company that you're working for or your own decision making is going to be very important here. I can do stuff that I couldn't do before with AI. I
Hmm.
can treat it more as a consultant. I can treat it more as a partner. I can bring people on as consultants as opposed to hiring them full time. I can
Right.
do a lot of things with it that save me an incredible amount of time. That being said, there's going to hit a point where we have to go and grow because there's only so much that I can put off on the AI. Only so much I should put off on the AI.
Yeah. My last little anecdote on this is there are going to be jobs that technology isn't going to take away,
Sure,
or there will be jobs that it's going to be very hard, very slow for technology to replace. And in that sense, I do think that as a whole, we need to reframe what we think about as the prime jobs, and we need to think about as a society what our focus for our lives want to also look like.
sure,
And I think that there will be a very interesting sociological shift about what is going to be the job of jobs to have when technology comes full circle and you see AI doing a lot more of those entry level jobs.
I agree. I want people to put their contempt prior to investigation on hold just a little bit, and especially if you're looking at what the future holds, we're not sure. So think through things. Try to understand it. If you're entering the workforce, don't say, "Oh, I'm never going to do that." If you are here for a long time, say, "Oh, I'm never going to adopt that." The plumber role, the trades are really powerful. I think that we those are unlikely to be disrupted by AI in the near term. And I think that people make great careers out of that. The white collar jobs are going to be much more likely to be disrupted in this particular case, and especially the things that AI is very good at. So analysts, I think, are going to be disrupted. A lot of transcription sort of things or data entry sort of things are going to be disrupted. Mm-hmm. Your programmers, your developers are going to be disrupted. But the call for expert judgment, the human in the loop aspect, is still going to be present. Those jobs are still going to be needed. The training that you got in gaining the knowledge to be capable of doing those jobs is still valuable. So it's a question of how you use it. And you get to choose. You can be the warrior. You can be the person that is afraid. And you also get the option to choose, okay, well, I'm going to look at this eyes wide open and choose my own future. That's the only thing you have your choice. So how you choose to deal with what's happening to you now, it's going to be hard for a lot of people. There's going to be lost jobs. There's going to be fear. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. And that's not a fun time to live for people that still have to pay the bills. Or it can be an incredible opportunity. And the thing that is crazy to me is it's both at the same time. And a lot of times how you approach it really drives what you see.
So everyone listening should definitely take our quiz so that they can assess how they view technology. And that way they can dig a little deeper, know where their strengths are, where their blind spots might be, so that as they assess the ever-changing tech landscape, they can make better decisions for themselves and their futures.
Don't be afraid.
All right, I want to go take a quiz. I think I know I'm a pioneer, but who knows? Maybe I'm someone who's like, let's get rich quick.
Could be both.
I want to go take it.
There's a blend. All right. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, thanks for scratching my brain today. Helping me scratch my brain.
Thank you, Juliana. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Accelerating Humans. If you would like to take our Archetypes test, you can find that on our website, www.acceleratinghumans.com. If you'd like to reach out to myself or to Bert, you can email us at bert@acceleratinghumans.com or Juliana@acceleratinghumans.com. If you have any interest on being on the show, you can also reach us at those same emails.